carried unanimously. Right, we now come to item 10 on the agenda, which is the amendments to the alcohol control bylaw. So if I can ask Paul and Elizabeth to come to the table. I'm going to ask Josephine Bartley, Councillor Josephine Bartley, to move this. Do we have a seconder for the recommendations? Councillor Casey. So it's been moved and seconded, and Councillor Bartley, I'd like you to introduce it, and then we'll call on officers if they wish to add anything to your introduction to do so. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this item is about amending the alcohol control bylaw. We had a panel set up to go through the hearing and hear from the submitters. The panel was myself, Councillor Kathy Casey, IMSB member Glenn Wilcox, and I acknowledge them for their time and efforts in reading all the documentation to be able to come to their deliberation. I also acknowledge Monique Lowry from Auckland Unlimited and Acting Senior Sergeant Rachel Cameron from the Alcohol Harm Prevention Unit, who was also part of the hearings with us. You'll see our recommendations there, and thank you so much to Paul and Elizabeth for their work in putting together this bylaw, the bylaw recommendations, but also the bylaw amendment. It was 1,500 pages of submissions, 883 people submitted, no, 3,000 pages of submissions. So they did an incredible amount of work. You'll see our recommendations there are to adopt the proposed amended bylaw in attachment C of your report, to apply the proposed Waiora Western Springs Stadium ban area to any major event held at Western Springs outer fields, as well as the main fields, to extend it to the Auckland Zoo car park because we were thinking about displacement, to extend it from Mount Smart to also the Te Papapa train station, because that train station is actually in use. So we wanted to cover that area, and fan trails. So those are the main points. So this is all about, when I was on the local board, staff would come to us every time there was a major event and ask for a liquor ban. And then our local board was like, why don't you just have a blanket one over all major events at that venue? And that is what has come to fruition now. So it's blanket temporary bans over 4 major venues, over major events at those venues. Have I left anything out, Councillor Casey?
Thank you very much, Councillor Bartley, for that introduction. Paul or Elizabeth, is there anything that you'd like to add to that? Just to make it clear, I'm sure everybody around this table understands, but not necessarily everybody that might be following it online. This is not banning the sale of alcohol within the venue by proper licensed authorities. It's about the areas surrounding the venues and the preloading or post-loading that might occur in those areas that create threats. Post-loading, I think that's I probably invented that, Councillor, but if you pre and post, that kind of, I think it works.
Yeah, so to
Paul
put
and Elizabeth, you're fine with that?
So just to put it in plain English, it's about preventing people from bringing their own alcohol to those events.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the disorder that follows that outside. As we've seen actually in earlier occasions, I think Paul raised it with me earlier at Christmas in the Park. In the early years of that, I think I'm correct if that's the event where alcohol was being brought in and it did cause huge problems in what was otherwise a pretty happy family environment. So I think the understanding of the input of the motivations behind these recommendations are pretty clear. So I'll open it up now for questions from councillors. And the first question is in the name of Councillor Desley Simpson.
Thanks, Your Worship, and thanks for putting the sort of practical oversight on it, and to you, Councillor, as well. I'm just going to ask a couple of questions just to help the people, the public understand this better. So my first question is, so that means that you can still have events at the Domain, like Urban Polo and Christmas in the Park, that have alcohol there in that event. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So alcohol can still be sold or provided in the licensed areas at the event, and events like Urban Polo have a license, so they can still have their events.
Thank you.
And Christmas in the Park, the VIP area will still have alcohol, although that was a concern for us because it's actually quite hypocritical to say no alcohol, but if you're high up enough to be invited to the VIP tent, you can still get pissed at that event. So unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do about that, but that was a concern that we noted.
Yeah. Oh, well, can I ask the next question? I wouldn't put it quite like that, but anyway. My next question is, look, at the Domain, quite often people have their wedding photos there, and they might have a bottle of whatever and get a photo taken with a bottle of, I'll call it champagne, whatever it is. Is that still allowed? Are you saying that you can have alcohol at the Domain for things like that? Is it you're not banning alcohol from any part in the Domain? Is that? Could you please clarify?
Yes, so weddings wouldn't meet the threshold for a major event, so alcohol would still be able to be consumed in that event.
So you can still go there for a picnic and have a glass of wine?
Yes, that's correct.
Fabulous, thank you.
Yes, you can still do that, but the reality we know and we have experienced is that alcohol harm does occur because people, don't just have the glass of wine at those particular areas. They come in there with their boxes of Cody's, they get wasted, and there's brawls, there's fights. And I'm sorry, that's the perspective I bring because that's what I've seen. And that's what the rest of our panel agreed with. So it was about protecting our communities, which is why we recommend these recommendations here. But yes, you can still have that behaviour. Love it if that happened, but that doesn't just happen.
So I think what we've got is that we've got large numbers of people at big events. Drinking by bringing your own alcohol into the venue creates a real problem. If there's somebody there picnicking on a Sunday afternoon with a glass of wine, or they're celebrating a wedding with a glass of champagne, we tend not to have those problems. So it's about the numbers of people and related to the events. Councillor Richard Hills.
I don't think I had a question. Maybe I was flailing around or something.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Cooper, however, is not flailing, but wanting to ask a question.
It was just a comment in terms of our compliance and monitoring. Is that
I'll move to, if there's no other questions, so we'll move to any comments.
Yeah, I guess the thing is, this
Cooper.
is about the way we approach monitoring and compliance, is that we use a graduated approach. So Councillor Simpson's having a bottle of Moet or Mum in the Domain with her family, a little picnic. We're not going to go racing out there, or even if it was someone from anywhere. But if somebody is brawling in the car park, drinking and causing harm, whoever in a flash. So it's about harm. So if there's no harm, we don't do anything about it. But if there's harm, of course we do. So I think it's about applying a sensible lens to these occurrences.
Thank you. And that's a very good summary. So I'll put the recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. I declare that. We come now to the last item, substantive item on the agenda, which is about the endorsement